He pulled her up. Ruby was momentarily dazed. Why was her husband suddenly so kind to her? Was it because of his birthday? So she seized the opportunity. She presented the carefully prepared gift, although it had been dampened by the rain and didn't look very good. But I stayed up all night to embroider this. I hope you like it. Happy birthday. Thank you for coming into this world. This guy stared blankly at the handkerchief, not taking it for a long while. Just as Ruby's arm was starting to ache from holding it out, he finally reached out to take it. Along with the handkerchief, there was also a letter. Ruby explained that it was a self-criticism. She felt that if she said it was a letter, the man would throw it away immediately. This guy clutched the items in his hand tightly. His face once again showed that pain expression. Are you stupid? His heart seemed to be touched by something again. After the birthday party, Ruby met her father-in-law. This was their first meeting, but it wasn't hard to see that the father and son's relationship wasn't good. One moment he'd speak gently, the next he'd suddenly raise his fist. Otherwise, he wouldn't have missed his son's birthday party. After exchanging a few pleasantries, the Duke got straight to the point. He asked if they had been to the temple yet. Ruby's heart skipped a beat. It turned out that after the wedding ceremony, northern nobles would go to the temple to make vows after consummating their marriage, symbolizing that they had truly become husband and wife. This question was actually asking if they had consummated their marriage. Aaron, standing nearby, couldn't bear to see Ruby in a difficult position and said, "Brother, didn't even show up on the wedding day." Unexpectedly, the Duke flew into a rage. The wedding was so long ago, why haven't you fulfilled your duties yet, given Ruby's past of calling off engagements? The Duke seemed convinced that Ruby must also be part of the reason. Moreover, the main reason he strongly promoted this marriage was to change his son's celibate lifestyle. Even if this marriage didn't last long, his son might be able to accept marrying other women. Ruby was well aware of the Duke's thoughts. She wanted to win over her husband even more urgently, because under the Pope's ideology, the empire did not allow divorce. If she and Iskai consummated their marriage. Therefore, Ruby lived worse than a dog at home if she showed any disobedience. Then for her brother to take her back would come at a great cost. Thus, the series of plans caused by the broken engagement would all be delayed. The plan to assassinate Aaron might not be carried out either. More importantly, she would never have to go back to that terrible place. Just thinking about it made her happy. But how should she talk to her husband about this? The young couple had been married for 800 years, yet they hadn't even held hands. But as soon as the father-in-law returned, he wanted them to fulfill their marital duties. This put Ruby in a difficult position. After all, everyone in the empire knew that Iskai was a famous celibate. As she was thinking about this, she brought some fruit to the training ground. Lost in thought, a voice interrupted her. It was the young assistant she had chatted with before. After exchanging greetings, the boy pointed out Iskai's location to her. Her husband was wielding his sword among the crowd. Even with his face covered in sweat, it couldn't hide his outstanding looks. Ruby couldn't help but shout at him, "You're so handsome." Her father would scowl at her, and her brother would use a whip on her. The cheering interrupted the man's training. This guy turned his head with a death glare. It instantly frightened them, making them tremble. The cheering also attracted the blonde guy, who landed several punches on the young assistant. "You little rascal," slacking off again. After the blonde guy dragged him away, Ruby heard his guy's voice behind her. "It's so noisy." Despite the man's impatient expression, he surprisingly sat down next to his wife. He picked up an apple and started eating. Ruby remembered the first time she brought fruit. He wasn't disagreeable then. Watching the sweat drip down her husband's face to his neck, she instinctively wanted to reach out and wipe it off. Unexpectedly, her husband turned his head sensitively. "What are you doing?" "I wanted to wipe your sweat. It's so dirty, but I just washed my hands." This guy wanted to say, "I didn't mean your hands were dirty." But as the words reached his lips, he lowered his head and cursed, "Damn it." Ruby looked at her husband's unpredictable temper and suddenly felt it was so difficult. She had thought that after the birthday party, their relationship would progress further, but he was still so unapproachable. So pretending to be naive and pure became her only way to survive. After getting married, facing a husband who had no feelings for her, she was used to acting this way. "You should know that father is back, right?" Iskai nodded indifferently. "That's what I meant, but father's a bit angry." She could only gently guide the conversation. Iskai impatiently tossed away the apple core. "That's just how he is." How scary, she thought, on the verge of tears. Hesitantly, Ruby spoke again. He blamed us for not fulfilling our marital duties yet." Even with such direct words, the man still looked clueless. Ruby had no choice but to be more explicit, consummating the marriage. This time, his Sky understood, but he said there was no need to mind the old Duke's words. Ruby was speechless. Of course you can ignore it. After all, he's your father, but she couldn't. She was facing a life or death decision. So Ruby expressed her feelings again. She really didn't want to go home. I like you. Just being by your side makes me content. If you find someone you truly want to marry in the future, I'll leave on my own. This guy glanced at her suspiciously. It seems you really don't want to go home, but if they really took that step, there would be no turning back for their marriage. If you feel you might change your mind, it's not too late to say so now. If her husband didn't come to receive her, she'd walk back herself. Fortunately, her sister-in-law was easy to get along with. Ruby looked straight into the man's eyes. I will absolutely not change my mind. With that said, the man finally nodded. All right, we'll meet tonight, but saying it was one thing. When it came time to actually face it, Ruby was extremely nervous. She was worried about him coming, but even more worried he wouldn't come. God, please bless me. Let me get through tonight smoothly. Let my husband not be so cold and heartless. As she curled up on the bed praying, Iskai came in. You made the request but fell asleep first. Ruby's mind went blank for a moment. Seeing his expression, Iskai asked again uncertainly, are you really sure about this? As long as I'm with you, I'm fine with anything. Though she said that when she saw her husband's 8-pack abs, Ruby blushed to the roots of her hair. Next, you think it's the scene everyone wants to see, but it wasn't. While embracing his wife, this guy felt the horrific scars on her back. His expression changed instantly. What's this? Ruby lied, saying it was from playing with her siblings when she was young. But these words couldn't fool a man who had been in battles for years. He was silent for a moment, then helped his wife put her clothes back on. Is he concerned about the scars on my body? She had waited so long for this opportunity and felt really unwilling to let it go. Did I do something wrong again, or is there something you're unhappy about? Although also a cold beauty, she was always responsive to Ruby's requests. But before she could finish speaking, Sky suddenly asked, are there more? He was asking if there were any other scars on her body. Ruby suddenly wanted to tell him that she got these from being punished, but she had already lied and she was afraid her husband would get angry again. While she was hesitating, this guy suddenly stood up, then he laid down beside her. She didn't expect him to stay. After some thought, Ruby decided to apologize first. She didn't mean to hide the scars. She was just afraid of embarrassment, so she lied without thinking. This guy suddenly grabbed her hand. Stop, it's not what you think. He pulled Ruby into his arms. I'll just think another day would be better. Ruby looked at the man's profile. She had to admit he was indeed very handsome. Then she took his large hand. Was it by this hand that she died in her previous life? She got up to cover the man with a blanket. She whispered softly, full. He could have treated her like everyone else did. That way she would have known how to deal with it. But he just had to. That night Ruby had a dream. On the eve of the country's downfall, a great fire was burning. As soon as Ruby sat down, she wanted to hand over the housekeeper's authority. Ruby was stunned, such a large mansion, and the housekeeper's role was given so casually. She and his guy were confronting each other on the balcony. I knew you'd come. His guy's face was gloomy. Give me a reason, he asked. He wanted to know why she poisoned his sister, Erin. Ruby smiled both tragically and brilliantly. Killing his sister was her own idea, and she also stole the Holy Grail. Why? Because she loved him. She wanted to die by his sword as his wife. She had always dreamed of this damn place being destroyed. He helped her fulfill that wish. This guy held back tears. You just had to say I could have done anything for you. But I didn't want to spend a lifetime testing your feelings. I just wanted to confirm that you were on my side. At the moment I despised everything. Then she threw herself onto his sword without hesitation. She loved him, but she poisoned his sister. He loved her too, but she died by his sword. Ruby thought it was just a dream, unaware that it was the fate of her past and present lives. But how could a naive person like her manage the household? In this life, she humbly tried to please her husband just to avoid dying by his hand like in her previous life, but she didn't know that this guy had already fallen in love with her. The wedding night that should have happened came to an abrupt halt when he felt her scars, but to reassure his wife. He suggested having breakfast together with Ruby. Let's have lunch together from now on too. The small surprise came suddenly. Ruby hadn't yet reacted when her husband suggested going to the temple after eating. Everything seemed to be moving in a good direction, but Ruby was still uneasy. Is he protecting me? Or is he just trying to tell Romana's spies? The princess is in my hands now. Don't even think about plotting against Alandi behind our backs. But regardless, Ruby was in a good mood. If only she hadn't encountered someone who shouldn't have appeared. Yuri smiled brightly, but her brother behind her had a gloomy face, seeing that she wanted to call her brother over to greet them. Ruby could only smile awkwardly. Thankfully, this guy's appearance helped ease the situation. After refusing, she hesitantly suggested, "Can you just call me Ruby?" Although saying this seemed unambitious, she was alone in a foreign land. The group immediately put away their arrogant expressions. "What are you holding?" Ruby happily held up the flower wreath in her hand. "I made this for you myself. This is something only children would wear." Iskai complained verbally, but he gently took her hand. "Your hands are dirty." Their intimate gesture made Yuri's face change across from them. However, in the next second, she put on a teasing expression. She put her hand on Iskai's shoulder with such a cute wife. "How are you still so clueless?" As she spoke, she called her brother over. "He offended your wife earlier. I'll have him apologize to her now." Ruby inwardly scoffed. Seriously, if only you could see his face a few seconds ago, why should she accept such a fake apology? So she flipped her hair and pretended not to understand. "What are you talking about?" Her feigned ignorance startled the siblings. "Madam, you're truly magnanimous. Even I felt sad for you when I heard those words." Ruby smiled, but I wasn't sad at all. After all, as the strongest knight in the South, it's unsightly to always rely on his sister's pity for personal gain. However, their father ignored his words, but the female lead wasn't a fool. She felt lost and scared. It would be nice if someone could be close to her. Aaron agreed without hesitation. Ruby excitedly grasped Aaron's hand, extremely grateful, but her sister-in-law subtly removed her hand. Seeing his sister at a loss, Roland immediately stepped forward. "Madam, I was the one who offended you earlier." Ruby rarely showed anger on her face. She could see his difficulty. This guy interrupted Roland's words. One look scared Roland back behind his sister. Then he bent down close to his wife. "Are you really okay?" "Of course." The sudden concern made Ruby break out in a cold sweat. Iskai put his hand on her forehead to check. "Strange, you don't seem to have a fever." Yuri spoke up then. "Could it be that standing in the courtyard for too long has given her a cold?" "The lady's health is already weak." Hearing this, Iskai directly picked up his wife. "Really, I feel like I'm raising a child." He carried Ruby, taking large strides towards the inner part of the temple. He only left a sentence for the young girl: "You all can apologize next time." Watching his back, Yuri's fake mask completely crumbled. "What does that woman mean to you? You're actually protecting her like this." After getting away from the siblings, Ruby asked this guy to put her down. "Do you want your nose to bleed again?" Remembering her embarrassing history, Ruby's face reddened. She actually wanted to use this chance to get closer to him. "You don't need to be so cautious." But this position made her very uncomfortable. As if sensing this, Iskai held her a bit tighter. Since it was like this, Ruby quickly took the chance to confess. "Being held by you makes my heart race. I've really fallen for you." However, Iskai suddenly asked, "How did Roland offend you?" Ruby stammered that she didn't remember. But how could something that happened right under his nose be hidden from this guy? "As far as I know, he's saying a song mocking your natural curls, right?" It seems someone had deliberately concealed the content of the lyrics. But this was good. She really didn't want this guy to hear that offensive song, nor did she want to be misunderstood as trying to sow discord, so she quickly changed the subject. "All right, you said we'd eat together more often from now on, right? Don't you want to?" Actually, she didn't want to, because his expression was really too sour. Eating with him was like a form of torture, but she couldn't say that. Without thinking, she quickly pecked her husband's cheek. Then gave him a smile. How can I not want to? However, his luck would have it. This action was witnessed by the white-robed priests who had come looking for them. She wanted to die again. "Dear husband, what does it feel like to be watched?" At least Ruby felt like she wanted to die as the Pope's daughter to do such a shameful act in a holy place. Someone find her a hole to crawl into. Excessive politeness can easily lead to misunderstandings. The implication was clear: stop pretending and show your true nature. The priest, however, smiled with a see-no-evil expression, saying that her brother had ordered them to assist the young lady well. "I've been worried that you two hadn't come for so long after your marriage. It seems I was overthinking." These words made Ruby a bit flustered. His guys spoke calmly. "As everyone knows, I don't adhere to traditions." "I see. But since the lady is the Pope's daughter, shouldn't you follow traditions even if it's troublesome?" "I'm just joking." Then he hugged his wife. "It's just because my wife's health isn't good, so we delayed coming until now." Then he solemnly said, "I believe it won't be long before we visit again." Though they spoke with smiles, any keen observer could see the undercurrents between them. The surrounding priests openly showed their disdain, but it was understandable. The temple and royal family have never gotten along with Iskai, the king's nephew. How could he be liked by the priests? After the relevant prayers, the high priest invited Ruby to attend a charity event in a few days. Iskai directly stood in front of his wife. Is a couple allowed to attend together? Of course, if you can honor us, how can we not welcome you? Soon, on the day of the event, Iskai and Ruby arrived at the venue as promised. Faced with such blatant unwelcome, Ruby didn't get angry. She never expected the people here to treat her kindly. As soon as they entered, the blonde teased, "My lady, you could have come alone. Why bring that guy along?" Despite saying that soon Iskai was surrounded by people. He had wanted to chat with him alone. This guy noticed his gloom. What's wrong? I didn't expect so many people to attend. Everyone seems so devout. They're here to monitor if the temple is up to something. Then the little assistant appeared. I'm different. I'm a truly devout believer. The disturbed man was displeased. I don't remember giving you time off. Seeing the man about to get angry, Ruby quickly intervened on Thirsty. Why don't you go get drinks with him? Ruby had just taken a few steps. When this guy called her back, then he crouched down to remove some dirt from her shoe. So messy, Ruby awkwardly rubbed the back of her head. Haha, I've always been careless. Good that you know, I'll go now. Seeing his wife turn to run, Iskai spoke again. Don't run so fast. Her goal was just to let them know she wasn't a threat. After dinner, Aaron led her to the room prepared for her. You might fall. Okay, I'll walk slowly, step by step. Seeing this scene, the author, suddenly felt Iskai was so gentle. However, why was the wine pool in the temple in this state? Ruby was completely stunned. Was this not mocking her? The little assistant smiled sheepishly. Actually, I think it looks like you too, my lady. But for Islandee's perspective, holy nights, nosebleeds are their shining moment. We push our bodies to the limit to reach a certain level. It's proof that we've become stronger. While Ruby was chatting animatedly with the little assistant, the archbishop approached. Although Ruby wanted to keep her distance from the temple, she wanted to confirm if he was one of her brother's people, so she walked and talked with the archbishop. However, throughout the conversation, he seemed to be probing her relationship with this guy, and said Ruby shouldn't be so neglected. Ruby smiled and explained that everyone treated her well. As expected of Histina's angel, your broad-mindedness is admirable. But if you ever encounter something unbearable, you can always come here. The great temple of Alandee will never betray the archbishop. After all that was said, the only thing Ruby learned was that the archbishop had stayed in Rome for a while when he was young. Ruby looked delighted. A luxurious room, a spacious balcony, and the sea bathed in the setting sun's glow, creating a captivating pink hue. But based on this alone, she still couldn't confirm if he was a family mole. As they were talking, they saw the tense father and son facing each other. This guy, who was in a bad mood, actually turned his face away as soon as he saw her. What's wrong? Why should their father's son Coral concern you? Erin poked him with her finger. Don't mind them, they always fight when they meet. Let's go have tea over there. Ruby hadn't even sat down at the table when Yuri asked if she liked paintings. Ruby could only say she liked them but wasn't good at appreciating them. Is that so? But the Duke really loves paintings. Why don't you buy one as a gift for him, my lady? At first, it seemed like a good idea, but coming from a rival, it fell a bit off. Moreover, she was very poor now. Erin timely changed the subject. She wanted to find a dedicated maid for Ruby, preferably someone with no connection to the family. This way, they wouldn't be influenced by the family and would be more devoted to Ruby. Since the Marchioness had a wide network, she asked Yuri to have her mother help find someone. She specifically mentioned that it was her brother who first suggested finding a maid. Ruby felt a surge of joy inside, although she didn't trust Yuri. This was a good opportunity to cultivate her own loyal servant. Yuri gladly agreed and started discussing the selection criteria with Erin. Everything pleased her, so when her sister-in-law apologetically explained that her brother might return very late, Ruby just waved it off. But as they talked, she suddenly fell silent. When the other two looked at her, Yuri began coughing up blood profusely. Then with a thud, she fell backwards. Ruby panicked. She rushed over and held Yuri up. Miss, are you all right? By then, Yuri couldn't speak anymore. She just stared blankly, gasping for air. Just as Ruby was feeling utterly terrified, this guy rushed over and pushed her away forcefully. Her husband's murderous glare as he turned back instantly made Ruby feel like she'd fallen into an icy pit. She never would have imagined that her husband, who had been so protective just a moment ago, would now fiercely tell her to get lost. Ruby's mind was in chaos. She reached out her hand, wanting to ask her husband what he meant, but unexpectedly the man shouted, "Get out." without even turning his head. Watching her husband carry his childhood sweetheart away in big strides, Ruby lowered her head in defeat, and Aaron, who always stood by her side, only hesitated for a moment before following her brother's footsteps. This was even more satisfying. No one came to help her up, looking at the blood on her sleeves. Ruby's whole body trembled uncontrollably. She recalled her previous life when her sister had collapsed in front of her like this. Suddenly an angry shout rang out, "It's you," then she was forcefully pinned to the ground by Roland. "You did this, didn't you? I knew it would be like this, you vicious witch." Hearing the man's accusations, Ruby realized she was being treated as the culprit. Before she could react, there was a loud slap. Roland was sent flying. The newcomer was Yuri and Roland's father. He bowed and apologized to Ruby for his son's unreasonable behavior. However, one wave had barely settled when another arose. Suddenly, there was a flash of lightning. Somehow, monsters had invaded the temple. While everyone was scrambling for cover, Ruby was too scared to move. She was gasping for air. Fortunately, the blonde guy came looking for her. Seeing her cover her mouth with her blood-stained sleeve, he decisively tore off her sleeve. After all, what she wanted wasn't her husband's love. However, the head maid behind Aaron gave her a meaningful look. Then he activated a magic barrier to protect her. He then commanded other holy knights to secure the scene and fight the monsters. The temple was in complete chaos. What was supposed to be a good celebration had turned into a mess. When the main doors finally opened again, Ruby received news that Yuri's life had been saved. However, the person who had served them red wine earlier was nowhere to be found. The investigation could only start by tracing the source of the poison. So when the Duke asked for her opinion the next day, Ruby felt that the Duke must be suspecting her. She could only say that the poisoner must have been targeting Yuri, as she and Aaron drank it without any issues. However, the Duke told her it wasn't poison in the wine, but the essence of magic stone, this kind of thing involving magical use. Its usage rights must be approved by the papal office, yet not a single magic stone kept in the temple was missing. What does this mean? It means that apart from her, the Pope's daughter, no one else could have access to it. In other words, now everyone thinks she's the mastermind behind this incident. It seemed this night wouldn't pass so simply. Sure enough, in the middle of the night, Ruby was awakened by the cold. Worse still, her family's tradition of assassination was an open secret. Just as Ruby was at a loss for words, the Duke spoke again. "I won't tolerate anyone wrongly accusing my daughter-in-law of being the culprit. Because you are part of the Omelette family, and I don't believe you would do such a thing." Does this mean her father-in-law already considers her one of their own? For Ruby, who was isolated and helpless at this moment, these words were like a lifeline. Her suppressed emotions burst out at this moment. "I really don't know what to say. Everyone must think I was jealous of Miss Yuri, so I did such a thing." Seeing his daughter-in-law cry, the Duke was at a loss. He took out a handkerchief and restated his position. He trusted her and only asked if she might know something because of the special circumstances. "I'll say it again, whoever frames my daughter-in-law is insulting me." Although Ruby was very touched, she knew that few people would think like her father-in-law. But what was the truth? Was it an enemy of the Aurelia family? That's not impossible. After all, magic stones could be bought on the black market, or was it Ramana's side? But they had no reason to use something that would expose their identity. Looking at it this way, it seemed more like someone was targeting her. After all, if Yuri was harmed, all suspicion would fall on her. Then who would benefit from this? She immediately acted like a puppet just to stay alive. The fireplace had been extinguished at some point. Was it her perverted older brother, worried that she might develop feelings for this place? So he used this to drive a wedge between her and his sky. This made sense. After all, he would be eager for her to be divorced and sent back as soon as possible. Moreover, he had access to as many magic stones as he wanted. Thinking of this, Ruby felt desperate. It seemed the family spies had already informed her brother about the temple incident. She had only been focused on dealing with her husband, forgetting about the spies lurking around her. Thinking of this guy, she recalled his chilling gaze. He must regret it now, regret being so nice to her all this time. After all, Yuri was far more important to him than she was. Her mind was in chaos and her old problem resurfaced. She picked up a water glass, wanted to drink some water, but as soon as it touched her lips, she sensed something was wrong. She covered her throat, coughing incessantly. Around the shattered glass, she saw particles that hadn't fully dissolved. Ruby understood. Someone was punishing her on Yuri's behalf. She really envied Yuri. Everyone was on her side. She crawled on the ground, wiping the crystals, but suddenly realized someone was standing behind her. She immediately had a bad feeling. She'd heard that the northern regions were full of magical beasts, so the sacred fire must always be kept burning, first for warmth and second to repel magical beasts. As she turned around, Aaron suddenly pinned her against the wall. Why did you do this? Her love rival was poisoned. She became the target of everyone's anger. And now her sister-in-law, without explanation, had her cornered against the wall. Why did you do this? Was it to attract attention? Ruby initially thought Aaron was saying this because she believed her to be the culprit. However, her sister-in-law was questioning, why did you make yourself vomit? Do you think food will dirty your body? It turned out that as soon as her sister-in-law entered, Aaron had noticed the bite mark on her hand. This was caused by Ruby's habitual self-induced vomiting. But the mark was so faint, it was almost negligible. Even her family, who had lived with her for over a decade, hadn't noticed. So how did Aaron discover it? Did she have a similar experience, or did it remind her of someone? If you want to die so badly, just die quietly by yourself. Why use this method? It was the first time Ruby had seen Aaron lose control like this. Her tears fell silently. Unless someone deliberately extinguished it, the fire wouldn't go out for no reason. Because this is the only thing I can control myself, Aaron was suddenly startled. She instantly regained her composure. What have I done? She withdrew her hand, stepped back, apologized, and hurriedly left. After the conflict from the previous night, the atmosphere was still awkward when the two had dinner the next day. It wasn't until Ruby stood up to leave that Aaron called out to her. She said the temple had invited her over. Ruby turned back with a smile. All right, I'll go. Thank you. On the way to the temple, Ruby was still wondering who had poisoned Yuri. Could the archbishop really be her brother's spy? But Yuri was his own niece. The more she thought, the more confused she became. She decided to let it go and hope to find answers when she met people, but as she entered the temple, she couldn't help but think of this guy. She hadn't seen him since the poisoning incident. If he suspects me so much, why doesn't he just call and ask me directly? Thinking this, she had already entered the training ground, hoping to catch a glimpse of him, but she didn't see who she wanted to see. Recalling the headmaid's malicious look earlier that day, could it be she wanted to teach her a lesson? Just as she thought this, she heard heavy breathing behind her. Instead, she heard something she shouldn't have. Roland was arguing with his assistant. His sister had almost died, yet the assistant still said that woman was innocent. He even said if it weren't for his father stopping him, he would never become a holy knight in this lifetime. Innocent, what's so great about being the Pope's daughter? Even if she's pretending to be harmless, it can't hide her inner filth. On one hand, she's flirting with her own brother. On the other, she's dreaming of being his guy's wife. I better not run into her or I'll tear that ugly face of hers apart. Every word struck Ruby's heart hard. She covered her ears and ran away frantically, but as she ran, she didn't want to move anymore. She was truly exhausted. She found a bush and crouched down, but after hiding this time, what would she go next? Was there still a place for her in this world? Her body hurt, her heart hurt too. Ruby was startled. Looking back, she collapsed to the ground. Outside the floor-to-ceiling window, a green-eyed magical beast was staring at her intently. She missed this guy so much. She missed his kindness towards her. Why did you believe me? Why did you protect me? This will make me expect something from you, expect you to be different from others. But suddenly there was a rustling sound from the bushes. Then came a bubble sound. It was Bubble who had come to comfort her despite the danger. Ruby was touched. Bubble was perhaps one of her few friends here. Her grievances instantly welled up. Bubble, I feel so bad right now, but seeing you makes me feel better. Bubble froze for half a second, then reached out and picked her up on its back. You're not planning to take me away, are you? She hesitated for a moment, then suddenly resigned herself and buried her head in Bubble's embrace. Forget it, everyone probably wants her to disappear anyway. However, what she didn't expect was that the reason his guy hadn't shown up for days was because he had been tirelessly searching for the culprit. His best friend was worried sick, fearing that before he could find the culprit, he might drop dead first. Besides, apprehending the real culprit wasn't their job. He knew his Sky was anxious. After all, the victim was a childhood friend. Watching this little darling approach step by step, she wanted to flee, but her body wouldn't move. However, his Sky denied this. He had never thought of investigating for Yuri's sake. Although Yuri said strange things to him after waking up and even held his hand, his mind was always preoccupied with Ruby. Her lifeless eyes had deeply pained his heart. If that day the monster hadn't been struck down or if Yuri's blood had splashed on her, The consequences would have been unthinkable. That's why he urgently pushed her away that day. Everything he did wasn't for others. It was all for her. She would understand him, right? But his blonde friend thought that even if the culprit wasn't Ruby, it could be someone from Ruby's family. But this speculation also didn't hold water. Seeing this guy stand up to change his investigation direction again, the blonde couldn't help but ask, what if the culprit you're desperately searching for turns out to be your wife? Unexpectedly, the man answered without hesitation that it didn't matter. That cold gaze seemed to say that as long as it had anything to do with her, he would deal with it mercilessly. The blonde was speechless. He was about to argue with him. Just as she thought her life was about to end, a maid pushed open the door. When suddenly the young assistant burst in, panting, "The madam is missing." Ruby was tired. She was truly exhausted. After leaving the temple with Bubble, she had a good sleep, but when she opened her eyes, she saw a half-eagle, half-dog monster tearing apart a horse. Its green eyes swept over her. Ruby had to pretend to be asleep, but the eagle dog kindly tossed over a horse leg with buzzing flies circling around it. A scream instantly echoed through the valley, seeing Bubble rushing in. Ruby felt like she'd seen her savior, but Bubble let out a roar, then picked up the horse leg from the ground. He smashed it against the eagle dog's head with a pop. The eagle dog, not to be outdone, started arguing back with gurgling sounds. Ruby then realized they were actually friends. She quickly interrupted them. Bubble then handed over some wild fruits. "Is this for me to eat?" Seeing Bubble's affirmative response, Ruby took the fruit and put it in her mouth. Under the expecting gazes of the two cute creatures, she continuously gave a thumbs up. "Delicious, delicious." Her screams also brought her sister-in-law. In the next second, a sword flashed and the monster's body was split in two. Unexpectedly, this praise made them so excited that they hugged each other. Is it really that exciting? She couldn't help but be infected by their emotions, showing a long-absent smile, and so Ruby began her happy life with the monsters. Picking wild fruits and beans, new monster members would occasionally join. The monster seemed very friendly towards her, making her unsure if this was an innate ability of the original owner or a change due to her transmigration. But in quiet moments, she still missed this guy. For days had passed unknowingly. What was he doing? Did he know she was gone? What was she expecting anyway? This guy certainly wouldn't come this far to look for her, but what she didn't know was that the man had been searching for her from the start. He had turned the entire mountain upside down. Although after several days they only found one of her shoes. Although everyone thought the chances were slim, he still refused to give up. He kept asking himself, whose fault was it that Ruby disappeared? Was it the indifferent servants? Or the archbishop who invited him for a meeting? Or his sister who only cared about her best friend? Or the childhood friend who clung to his sister, but ultimately the one most at fault was himself. He knew how loyal the servants at home were, especially the head maid who treated his sister like her own daughter. Ruby opened her eyes. But it was this very loyalty that made them unable to accept Ruby. Thinking back to the birthday party, he knew the head maid had deceived him on her own accord. But considering she had watched them grow up, he chose to turn a blind eye. Now he realized he was wrong. He should have corrected it then. That way, his wife wouldn't have been missing for so long before anyone noticed. Missing the best time to search, he now found himself ridiculous. He had refused marriage because he didn't want to become like his father. His father's coldness led to his mother's suicide, and his coldness led to his wife's disappearance. Unknowingly, he had become just like his father, clutching the shoe in his hand. He was filled with deep remorse. He knew what the nights left unsaid. His wife was dead, impossible to find, but he didn't want to give up, at least not until he saw her remains. He just prayed she was alive. He prayed to his deceased mother, though he had forgotten her face, but he hoped she could bless him. The man before her was her husband, whom she hadn't met yet. Before she could express her gratitude, the man demanded, "Why did you do this?" He couldn't imagine what he would do if he lost her. At this moment, the knights caught two poachers. These two said they encountered a witch, a blonde witch, with two monsters that looked like a raccoon and an eagle. Hearing the word blonde, Sky's eyes widened. That must be his Ruby. He was a tool for his father's political marriage, a puppet in his brother's hands. Even after marriage, her every move was controlled by her family. To survive, she had lowered herself to dust. But even so, some people wouldn't let her be. It wasn't that Ruby didn't want to escape, but where could she go? The whole world was full of the Pope's followers. Even if she entered a convent, her brother could find her anytime. Right now, Bubbles' embrace had become one of the few moments of warmth in her life. Ruby had transmigrated into this novel 3 years ago. Her father was the all-powerful Pope, and the Pope's daughter was naturally a beloved princess. Ruby was confused. The man's eyes were full of coldness. "I'm asking why you extinguished the sacred fire." Ruby thought perhaps living here with them wouldn't be so bad. But in a forest full of mushrooms, danger lurked everywhere. Just like now, she accidentally stepped into a hole. With a thud, she fell into a cave. As Ruby looked around helplessly, Bubble and Gurgle jumped down after her. It seemed they were worried and followed her. Where was this place? It was too dark to see anything. Ruby frowned with concern. Bubble and Gurgle were suddenly making noises behind her. She turned around puzzled. Holy crap, there was a floor full of rubies in front of them. Ruby danced with joy. Wow, 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 is this the legendary vein of gems? Heavens, we've struck it rich. With these rubies, becoming the world's richest person is just around the corner. After the excitement subsided, he suddenly noticed a shiny object among the pile of gems. Driven by curiosity, he reached out to touch it. His wife nearly lost her life, yet her husband thought she was staging it. But the moment his fingers made contact, the thing seemed to move. Then came a loud buzzing sound. A giant dragon emerged, letting out a thunderous roar. Ruby was terrified. She frantically bowed to the dragon, saying, "I'm really, really sorry. We just fell in here by accident. We truly didn't mean to disturb you." But the dragon still glared at them fiercely, its eyes fixed on them. Then it swung its tail, scooping Ruby up into the air. Ruby was so scared that tears started flowing. She never imagined her final destination would be a dragon's stomach. Seeing Ruby captured, Bubble and Gurgle quickly pounced forward. They bit and jabbed at the dragon, but their attacks were merely like tickles to the massive beast. Ruby shouted, "Run away quick, don't worry about me." Just then the dragon turned its gaze back to her. It even lifted her to its nose and sniffed. "Please let me go," she begged. Surprisingly, the dragon seemed to understand her words. It actually put her down on the ground. Was it letting her go, just as Ruby was about to seize the chance to escape? The dragon swooped in front of her again. It poured a pile of gems in front of her. It wasn't entirely his fault. After all, this woman had been engaged to 3 men in a year and then found excuses to break off the engagements. What was it trying to do? Surely not trying to bribe her. After several repeats, Ruby angrily shouted at it. "Are you going to let me go or not?" The dragon came closer again and dumped another pile of gems in front of her. Staring at the dazzling gems, Ruby was dumbfounded. At that moment, Bubbles suddenly pounced from behind, grabbing Ruby and flying towards the cave entrance. Gurgle was on top, holding on to Ruby. The two creatures and the human flew out of the dragon's lair, leaving the dragon roaring in helpless anger behind them. Meanwhile, this guy had decided to find the witch mentioned by the poachers, but that place was in the restricted area of the monster forest. Almost no one who entered ever returned. Let alone Ruby, a weak woman. Even they, the magically powered holy knights, might not make it back alive. So Iskai thought, even if what they said was true, it might not be. "I'll go confirm if it's my wife myself. Those who were tired can go back." His subordinates didn't understand why he only brought a few of them. Wasn't it better to have more people when searching? This guy, frankly, said he couldn't trust the others. Recalling Ruby's several encounters with monsters and the doctor's diagnosis of his kidney weakness last time, he had a vague guess in his heart, and it was becoming more certain. The most ridiculous excuse was "you're too small," which devastated the man so much he never left home again. So Iskai thought extinguishing the sacred fire to attract magical beasts was just Ruby looking for a reason to break off the marriage. Watching him walk step by step into the depths of the forest, the blonde couldn't help but call out to him, "We can't go any further, the blood of Rome is just ahead. If your wife is really there, I'm afraid." Before he could finish, a monster's roar shook the forest. Then came a woman's scream. Married for months, she and her husband were still strangers. From the wedding to running away from home, she lived in torment almost every day. Some people ask, why doesn't Ruby, like other manga protagonists, leave her family and live freely on her own? But think about her situation in that male-dominated environment. If she were truly an insignificant member of the family, she might not have her freedom restricted. She could go out and make her own way. Life might be harder, but she could live freely. But the problem is she has value. Her father uses her for political marriage. Her brother covets her body. She can't escape, so in her past life she killed Aaron. She used Iskai to destroy her own country. She exchanged her life for revenge. His face darkened as he questioned her fiercely. Even his sister couldn't bear it. "Don't interrogate her like this. We don't know who did it yet. Besides, even if it was Ruby, it's because she didn't know about the northern environment. Some might say the main characters are mute, not speaking up even after several centuries. But think about their positions objectively. Ruby was sent for a political marriage from an enemy family. Plus, she had a reputation as an evil woman. It's normal for Iskai to be suspicious of her. Who would have known that in everyone's eyes, the favored little princess was actually raised under abuse? Although his prejudice against Ruby gradually weakened with each interaction, emotionally they were still strangers. And Ruby, she was sensitive and fragile. Her situation destined her to live dependent on others. So each of her decisions would determine her chances of survival. The shadow of being hurt in 2 lifetimes made her afraid to trust anyone easily. If we're being serious, we should criticize the male lead, after all, in their repeated interactions. He also noticed signs of Ruby's abuse. He knew she was sensitive and fragile. Ruby was moved to tears. "I love you so much." She took the chance to get closer to her sister-in-law's back and explained that it was too cold, so she woke up and found the fire was already out. He didn't want to expose her disguise, but at the moment his childhood friend was poisoned. He chose to abandon her, although he was just trying to protect her then, but at that time was he really so cautious that he didn't even have time to say a word of her properly. This guy didn't understand. He probably really didn't understand. He searched desperately to make amends, to apologize for that love he couldn't express. Finally, as snowflakes danced in the sky, he found her. Ruby stood smiling in the falling snow, beautiful like an angel falling to earth. He couldn't help but call out to her. Ruby's eyes suddenly widened. It can't be, it can't be. She turned back in shock. The person she longed for yet feared was now gazing at her intently. "Why are you here?" This guy wanted to speak. But Bubble and Gurgle let out a series of hisses. He quickly drew his sword. "Don't you get away from them." However, his wife suddenly roared, "Don't come any closer." This guy was stunned. "I beg you, leave me alone." His wife's tearful voice left him dazed. Unexpectedly, this guy didn't believe her at all. "Are you suggesting someone planned this? Do you mean me?" He wanted to explain, but Ruby shouted at him again, "Get away from me." His outstretched hand finally dropped while he was in a daze. Ruby turned and ran. She wished she could just disappear forever from the memories of her 2 lifetimes. Each life was unbearable. She had always lived in pain, unable to distinguish between illusion and reality, truth and falsehood, foolishly hoping to have a family here, to have someone's love, yet things never went as she wished. She'd had enough. She didn't want to go back. Let her stay here and fend for herself. As she ran, she tripped over her stone, falling to the ground. The snow beneath her was cold, but not as cold as her heart at that moment. She lay in the snow, sobbing uncontrollably. Enough is enough. Rather than struggling to survive here, suddenly a familiar roar. She raised her head straight up. The giant dragon that was trapped in the cave earlier was now staring at her with glowing green eyes. Ruby suddenly felt that ending it all like this wouldn't be so bad. She closed her eyes in exhaustion, and her reaction today deeply hurt Iskai's heart. Before, every time they met, even though she was full of lies, she always smiled brightly when looking at him. Or my sister. Ruby had expected her husband wouldn't like her, but she didn't think his impression of her would be this bad. She could only change her story, saying she was confused from sleep and then burst into tears. What happened? What could make her suffer so much every moment? If he had asked her earlier, would the outcome have been different? Yes, he should have asked her earlier. She was clearly so afraid. Yet what was her reason for desperately wanting to stay by his side? Once again, interrupted by the giant dragon's roar, he looked up at the sky following the sound. The yellow-haired group also arrived just in time. "Look, isn't that the lady in its front claws?" This guy chased after it without a word. There were still many things he didn't understand, but he only needed to know that he couldn't ignore her. She closed her eyes, thinking she would die in the dragon's mouth. But the dragon not only didn't harm her, it even carried her to the sealed cave. Her body felt cold, but where her hand touched was warm. Opening her tired eyes, she found the big dragon right beside her. "I wasn't eaten." At this moment, the dragon brought its nose close and nuzzled her. The feeling was gentler than a cat's. Ruby reached out to stroke its mouth. "Why did you bring me here? It would have been better to just end it there." "I promise it won't happen again." Perhaps unable to bear seeing a woman cry, this guy, who originally wanted to ask something more, suddenly turned and left. As if understanding her words, the dragon brought its nose close again, making soft, cooing sounds. Ruby felt as if the dragon was trying to comfort her. She sat down and started shattering. "Bubble and Gurgle, are they okay? They were just trying to help me." Don't blame them. Suddenly a sharp pain shot through her foot, looking at her swollen ankle. She realized she had twisted it when she fell. At this moment, the dragon quietly dropped a mushroom, gesturing with its eyes. Ruby understood immediately. You want me to use this on the injured area? Seeing the dragon nod proudly, Ruby suddenly landed on its thigh. You're a strange dragon. What was wrong with her? Was it because no one had cared for her for so long that this moment felt so precious? Thank you, really. So this is where you're willing to hide? A male voice broke the brief tranquility. This guy appeared at the cave entrance. Backlit, Ruby could only see his fierce eyes. Her heart leapt to her throat before she could react. The man strode towards her just as Ruby was panicking. The dragon let out a roar. This guy also raised his sword. How dare you, kidnapping someone's wife and still having the audacity to roar. As a battle seemed imminent, Ruby panicked. She couldn't let the dragon get hurt because of her. She gripped the mushroom tightly and threw it at his sky. Such an incident on the first day of marriage. Stop it, the mushroom hit the man squarely on the head. The man and dragon stopped their confrontation. But she was so scared her legs went weak. What had she done? What has she made him even angrier, seeing his guy thrust his sword into the ground, covering his face and cursing damn it. Ruby hurriedly apologized. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hit you. As if to back Ruby up, the giant dragon beside her once again made a whimpering sound. Ruby quickly stopped it. No, you stopped too. Seeing her shake her head repeatedly, the dragon reluctantly quieted down. Ruby let out a sigh of relief. It was then she noticed Iskai standing motionless. His body staggered as if he might fall at any moment, and she thrown it too hard, but she had no time to think about that. How could she explain to him that her being with the monster was purely accidental? How could she explain that she didn't intend to run away? Did it even matter if she explained? Would he believe her? But even if he wouldn't believe her, she still wanted to explain. I didn't betray you. I know you won't believe me. I know you'll think I'm a witch controlling monsters, but I really didn't do anything. In reality, her mother was already pregnant before marrying the Pope, so she, having no blood relation, naturally became a wife for political marriage. Didn't dampen Ruby's determination to win over her husband. She dressed up carefully and went to the training ground carrying a fruit basket. She looked up and cried loudly. All the fear and grievances of these days were stripped of their disguise at this moment. I didn't run away on purpose. I fainted because I felt sick. Those monsters saved me. They didn't do anything wrong. I'll accept any punishment. Please just don't send me back to Rome. He had finally found his wife. But his wife didn't want to go back. He understood. He got it. If it were him, he wouldn't want to go back either, despite suffering so much. She kept apologizing. This guy crouched down, his heart aching. He reached out and gently caressed her cheek. I won't, so please stop crying. Then he took out the shoe Ruby had dropped from his pockets. He lifted her foot and carefully put it on. I promise you I won't let anyone call you a witch. However, Ruby's ankle was too swollen to fit into the shoe. Iskai paused briefly. 1,000 words turned into a simple I'm sorry. I was wrong. Ruby could hardly believe her ears. Hadn't he always found her annoying? Since her goal was to survive under her husband's protection, she needed to understand her husband's preferences first. Hadn't she always made him angry? Hadn't he wished she would disappear? Hadn't he always believed she had poisoned his childhood friend? Why was this happening? While she was still in a daze, Iskai reached out his hand again. Come back with me. At this moment, Ruby was truly moved. Although the big dragon beside her made whimpering sounds, trying to keep her, that outstretched hand made her long for it even more. The moment their hands touched, Iskai held her tightly in his arms as if he had found a lost treasure. It's all right now. Her husband's gentle voice, the warmth of her husband's embrace, made Ruby unable to suppress her emotions any longer. She fell into his arms and cried loudly. Perhaps all the misunderstandings and grievances could dissipate with these swirling snowflakes. After returning home, Ruby slept for several days and nights. She dreamed of her sister, the only one who loved her in both lives. Are you unhappy here too? What should we do? Her sister's figure was blurry. Ruby reached out, wanting to keep her. She was truly lost, not knowing how to be happy, whether in her past life or this one. She was so tired. Would things be different if she found someone to confide in? After sleeping for who knows how long, Ruby finally opened her eyes. Would he really not send her back? Could she stay here peacefully from now on? Just then she heard Aaron's voice, seeing her sister-in-law looking at her with concern. Ruby quickly replied that she was much better, but the atmosphere became inexplicably awkward. In the end, it was Aaron who broke the silence first. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pressure you that day. Find more opportunities to spend time with him, and try her best to present herself as a naive and innocent girl. Seeing that Ruby accepted her apology, Aaron began to explain the reason for her outburst. My mother had the same scars on her hands as you. In the year she passed away, she also used this method to induce vomiting. It was then that Ruby learned that Aaron's mother had suffered from severe mental illness. At the same time, she had an unhealthy obsession with external beauty. Despite already being beautiful, she would often grab her daughter and ask if she was ugly. No matter how her daughter answered, she wouldn't listen. For the sake of the Duchess's dignity, she threatened her daughter not to tell anyone about this. Otherwise, she would die immediately. Until now, only she and a few servants knew about her mother's condition. For young Erin, such memories were like nightmares. So when she saw the same scars on Ruby's hands that day, she lost control of her emotions. After listening, Ruby fell into deep thought, so Erin was also influenced by those closest to her just like her. The one who influenced her the most must have been her sister. Her parents' failed love made her afraid to believe in marriage, but for her sister's sake, she still married the evil woman from the enemy country. So that at least when Erin is poisoned in the future, people won't instinctively suspect her. Unexpectedly, the rumored manipulative evil woman was actually a pitiful soul in private. Originally, this guy thought that once Ruby had stayed in the north long enough, she would find a way to divorce him. But through their interactions, he had already fallen in love with her. He searched for her tirelessly for 4 days and 3 nights, finally bringing her back. Afterwards, to cover up the fact that she awakened the evil dragon, he made up a lie about the self-defense force, discovering the dragon and Ruby. But his unusual behavior eventually aroused the Emperor's suspicion. Normally, considering the interests of both countries, this guy would have sent that woman back to Rome long ago. Was it compassion or had he fallen in love with her? Not only was the Emperor unclear, even Iskai himself wasn't sure. He only knew that his heart had been aching these days. He wanted to make excuses, saying that because she was the Pope's daughter and his wife, he had to protect her out of responsibility. But these words couldn't convince the Emperor nor himself. I advise you to give up this pointless emotion. Acting on emotions often leads to regret. Yes, his sister was like that. She sneakily hid behind a pillar to peek when a voice from behind startled her. Iskai's mother, as the Emperor's sister, had absolute power and wealth. But she was deeply mired in the swamp of love, suffering unbearably. They were once so in love, once so happy. But in the end, she ended her life under a willow tree. Iskai was the first to discover her body. And until now, no one knew the reason for her suicide. The Emperor didn't want his nephew to follow his mother's path. But clearly, this nephew wasn't listening. He immediately turned to seek advice from the Knight Commander. Your wife has run away from home, too. The commander was stunned for a moment. No wonder he looked so gloomy since he entered. So this was what he was worried about. Rather than running away, it's more like returning to her parents' home. Did your wife leave because she didn't want to see you? That's not it, but if she had told me the reason directly, it might have been better. The commander was even more surprised and joked. I didn't expect his guy to actually reflect on himself. Then he looked at his guy with interest. This subordinate was known for his bad temper. You don't look at your wife with such a fierce gaze, do you? Iskai sighed. He really didn't know how to deal with her. It's hard to find someone as clueless as you, but fortunately you're newlyweds. Who are you looking for? She turned around, stammering to explain. The blonde man recognized her at a glance. It turned out the man was one of the members of yesterday's wedding escort, hearing that she was looking for her husband. There's only one answer. The commander walked over and patted his shoulder. That is to spoil her unconditionally. The more gifts, the better. Also, accompany her to various occasions and reflect on your attitude to the fullest extent. That's how experience has passed on. But the practice is up to the individual. Even now, this guy still looked confused. The fact that he made a deal with the light team, along with the knights, he ultimately didn't tell the commander. This inevitably caused dissatisfaction among his teammates. After all, the truth can't be hidden forever. If it's exposed later, they'll surely face severe consequences. Westguy's attitude was firm. Whoever wants to talk, they can go and talk themselves. Gray hair got even angrier. Are you threatening me? Just for that woman from Borsia, yellow hair, seeing he couldn't persuade him, indirectly insulted this guy, saying cowards like him would naturally be afraid. This set Gray hair off. Who are you calling a coward? Yellow hair simply blocked Gray hair behind him. Why don't we just kill this guy and be done with it? The group argued noisily. Finally, the more level-headed red hair asked the key question. How are you sure it wasn't Ramana's side that made the move? This guy was almost certain. Given his father-in-law's vast influence, if he were to use his daughter against Bae, he surely wouldn't stop at this. Moreover, all of this seemed too hasty. So what do you plan to do in the future? Facing this question from his teammates, this guy didn't know how to answer. Although children often resemble their parents, he didn't want to be like his mother, so fragile inside that she'd shatter at the slightest touch. The blonde man almost dropped his jaw. After all, who in the whole country didn't know about Iskai's bad temper? The reason he had always resisted marriage was to avoid repeating his parents' mistakes. He also knew that if he sent her back to Rome, he would return to his previous life. But even if it meant deceiving everyone, even threatening, he was unwilling to let her go. His wife always said she loved him, but he thought it was a ploy for divorce. After all, no woman would say she loved someone while accepting beatings with a face full of fear. But he still didn't understand what his wife was afraid of, who exactly had pushed the noble daughter of the Pope to such a state. And how could her brother, the Cardinal, stand by and do nothing? Several times he wanted to ask Ruby, but feared touching her pain. Because avoiding reality is human nature, just as they never mentioned their mother all these years. And now, what he needed to do was protect his wife to the best of his ability. As soon as this guy returned home, he beat up the guards who had been indifferent to Ruby's disappearance. But since she was already here, he still shouted for him to come out and see his wife. He also warned all the servants, if his wife was harmed even slightly, everyone would have to pay with their lives. He was so angry at everyone and even angrier at himself, he reached out to stroke his wife's hair. If only you were a bit more selfish or born more ordinary, you wouldn't have to suffer like this. Meanwhile, Ramana's older brother received letters about Ruby brought by the messenger. He hadn't expected the usually obedient Ruby to cause such a big commotion. The search team took 4 days and 3 nights to find her. He was even more surprised that his blockhead of a brother-in-law would personally go to bring his sister back. Just thinking about them returning home, his hand holding Ruby's made him want to chop him up. Originally, he had strongly opposed this marriage. But his father insisted on marrying Ruby off. He was somewhat relieved when he heard that the man was an ascetic. To actually show compassion for his sister, who gave him the right to interfere in Ruby's marriage. He would make him pay sooner or later, but now wasn't the time for him to go there, so he turned to his subordinate beside him. Before I go there personally, don't miss any detail. The man with the unclear face heard this, and immediately a sinister smile spread across his lips. Immediately, Iskai's cursing voice came from inside. Ruby hid behind the pillar, breaking out in a cold sweat. Coming to find him so rashly, wouldn't it anger him? You mean I can handle it as I see fit? Ruby's illness lasted for half a month after that. On this day, she was enjoying an outdoor afternoon tea with Aaron and 2 young girls. Iskai suddenly came looking for her. Ruby was so surprised she didn't know how to react. After all, it had been too long since she'd acted. She didn't even know how to perform. The blonde next to Iskai was the first to greet her. Long time no see, madam. Congratulations on your recovery. Ruby tried to remember and take a step forward. Unexpectedly, she tripped over a chair. This fall sent her directly into Iskai's arms. Ah, embarrassing myself right when we meet. What a situation. You look like you still need rest. Ruby hurriedly waved her hands. No, it's because I'm too excited to see you, just as the two were getting lovey-dovey. The blonde sister called them over to eat cake. This shouting man or displeased her brother. Why are you acting like a wild girl? Brother, you're the one acting like a grumpy old man. The scene of the siblings bickering made Ruby laugh out loud. Iskai gazed at her with gentle eyes. He suddenly leaned in and whispered in her ear, Ruby, I will take good care of you. Soon Iskai walked out from inside. What are you doing here? Ruby blushed, not quite understanding his meaning at first. She remembered when they were leaving the forest. The big dragon whimpered goodbye to her and gave her a huge ruby. So that's what Iskai meant. Ruby also means red gemstone, you know. This ruby is also entrusted to you. People only understand the value of something after losing it. After the running away incident, Iskai finally started learning how to get along with his wife. He would accompany her for tea and chat and offer her delicious little cakes. Although Ruby was still nauseous around food as usual, this time she surprisingly found the cake tasty. During their chat, they brought up the issue of the big dragon's disposal. The temple seemed intent on including dragon taming in the sword-fighting program, but considering it was still in its young dragon state and an extremely rare species, most people advocated for releasing it. Ruby felt particularly distressed hearing this. The dragon was awakened by her, and possibly because of her, all the magical creatures in the forest might be implicated. This guy saw all of her sadness. Now he just wanted to stay by his wife's side, accompany her for meals.